Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's Motivational Monday educational webinar. My name is Janet Tebow, and I currently serve as the Branch Council Chair here at IDA. I have a couple of quick announcements before we get started. Our next two webinars will be Foundation Skills for Mathematics and Resilience in Challenging Times Part 2, Nurturing Hope and Resilience in Our Children. Please continue to check our website and e-blasts for more information on both the descriptions and dates for these webinars. We really hope that you're enjoying these webinars and are finding them informative. We're working on increasing our subscribers, so if you're finding these useful, please share this with other friends and also subscribe on YouTube and like us on Facebook. Also, please encourage your friends and colleagues and yourselves as well to continue to make donations to our COVID Relief Fund by clicking the donate link in the YouTube description or using the donate button on the Facebook page. This fund provides computers and laptops and tablets to those in need. It provides software and tutoring assistant stipends and also advocate service stipends. To date, we've awarded over $30,000 worth of scholarships, and we've awarded over 183 scholarships for educators and families for the tutoring and advocacy stipends. The applications keep coming, so please continue to give, and we're asking for just $1 or more for your support. Today's topic is integrating reading supports with educational technology. This session is going to focus on the various use of tools that can support differentiated and individualized engagement during various components of reading instruction. Our presenter today is Sharon Plante. She's an educator with only over 23 years teaching experience in special education. She currently serves as a teacher and Chief Technology Integrator at the Southport School. As a certified Orton-Gillingham tutor, she uses her training and understanding of technology to empower students with learning disabilities in the classroom and through virtual learning. In addition to working with students, Sharon also delivers online and in-person presentations and workshops to other educators to help them integrate online teaching best practices into their classrooms. She's provided workshops for Kent Independent School District in Michigan, the Pennsylvania Department of Education, the Assistive Technology International Association. She's also led virtual trainings for Learning Ally Spotlight on Dyslexia, PaTTAN and the Center for Technology and Disabilities, as well as the Dyslexia Foundation, and for us here at the International Dyslexia Association. Sharon's also the co-author of Utilizing Technology to Engage Students with Learning Disabilities. She's a member of the Connecticut Association of Independent School Commission on School Growth and Collaboration. And additionally, she was awarded the 2016 Distinguished Alumni Award from George Mason University College of Education and Human Development. So I'm going to turn this presentation over to Sharon now. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you, Janet. Welcome, everybody. I'm really excited to engage with you over the next hour. It's going to be a lot of information, but hopefully it will help you kind of answer some of the many questions that you sent along the way. I hope I can answer some of them as we go and get some time at the end to answer a few of them. There were over 600 questions, so sorry if I do not get to answer yours today, but I thank you all for them because it's going to get me back to blogging and podcasting to answer as many questions as I can. The link on the bottom of this first slide is simply to allow you to access this presentation. I will put it up again at the end. There is nothing proprietary in this presentation, so I feel free to access it and share it with others. So again, I do work at the Southport School. It is a small independent school in Connecticut. We only work with students with language-based learning disabilities, so dyslexia, ADHD, executive function challenges. The Southport CoLab is our training branch. I'm going to mention it a few times along the way because some of your questions we may be able to answer for you. So you can always reach out to me. Here's my email. If you're active on Twitter, I'd love to connect, so please follow. The link to my blog as well, which again, you guys are going to have me back up and running pretty quickly. There are links here also for the Southport School and Southport CoLab if you want to learn more information. Click on my own link. So many of you asked questions about Orton-Gillingham. I'm really not going to get too specific into that today. I'm kind of going to go a range of supports. However, the IDA was kind enough a couple of months as we went into remote learning to share out for free this presentation. My Orton-Gillingham fellow, Teresa Collins, and I did at the IDA about 3 years ago. So there is a link here to access it. You can find it on their YouTube channel as well, where we kind of go back and forth about the different parts of an OG lesson and some thoughts about implementing it with and without technology. But if you access the slides, you can also access the video here. So to get right into it, many people asked about accessible print, and I'm going to address that in several different ways as we go through. But the two big ones, of course, that many people may or may not know about. First one, Learning Ally. Learning Ally is a wonderful resource for many things, but a big component is their accessible text. Their texts are human voiced for reading. I'm going to make a point about that in a little bit. They have textbooks and literature books. Much more, but not all of their text has print along with audio. It can be very important for some students, particularly when they're learning decoding, to see the text as they're listening to it, but it does not say that you should not access this wonderful resource. They have their own tools, whether you're in a browser or on a Android or iOS device. It is subscription-based, and you do have to qualify. So schools can subscribe, families can subscribe, teachers can subscribe, but there is a cost to it. Sometimes the lesser known cousin is Bookshare. Bookshare is a very similar resource, but it's digitized voice of the text, but there are textbooks and literature books as well. All of their resources have the text along with the auditory component to it. It works in any browser, but if you're on another device, you need a third-party app to access Bookshare. iOS, I highly recommend Voice Dream Reader. They have higher quality voices built in and more that can be purchased. I love this developer. He's doing many things with this app. And I think it can go really any age range. If you have younger students and are just getting started, Dolphin Easy Reader, it's a much more simplistic and simplified tool to use. It's free. Voice Dream Reader, there is a cost, but both great tools. And Bookshare is free for qualified users. We have, as our school, I have carte blanche to qualify all my students. So if you're a school, you can contact Bookshare for how to go about doing that, but families can apply also on their own. Now, the key component I talked about is whether students need this accommodation, but really also thinking about human voice versus digitized voice. And sometimes I've heard parents say they think they know what their student would want, but they're not so sure. So there is a great assessment tool. This is the Protocol for Accommodations in Reading. There is a paper-based version that was created by Dr. Denise DaCosta and Linda Wilson that is accessible. Right link on here, down there, and also on Don Johnston's website. This is Don Johnston took that and made a digital tool. So there's the paper version that's free. This is the digital version. There is a cost. But here is an assessment that is given to help one determine if listening to text can benefit comprehension and also what kind of voice should be used. So this was actually a 7th grade student. You can see at the 4th grade level, their comprehension was not showing through. They had to silently read a passage and they were multiple choice questions. Then the tool goes through, or again, if you're doing it one-on-one with the paper version, you present it in this way with human audio and text audio. And as you can see, what a wonderful thing this was, that we could prove that the comprehension could be beneficial for the student with auditory components. I remember speaking with this young man when we went over it, and he was feeling pretty defeated. And then when I showed him he could comprehend at the 12th grade level, he just needed to listen. Well, he was ready to go off and listening right away. So it was very motivating for him to learn how beneficial listening to text was to him. There are students, I will say, that do come out with the text reader higher as well. Sometimes it's just making sure that knowing that both can be beneficial. So if someone was only able to access Bookshare because of a cost, it could still say, well, it's still beneficial, maybe not as much, but still going to help that student with their comprehension. We still very much live in a paper-based world, and so sometimes you need to access paper. So these are a variety of tools that can be used to access paper. Voice Dream, the developer, came up with a scanner. I really like his scanner. There is a cost to it. Again, iOS devices. Claro has another scanner I've used for a while that's both on Android or iOS. Seeing AI is really designed for the blind. It's designed by Microsoft for iOS devices. I only recommend it because while Voice Dream and Claro have a cost, Seeing AI is free. However, it has many other components built in. So if a student was very distracted by them, might not be the tool, but it has a wonderful text reader built in. Speechify, designed by a dyslexic young man while he was at Brown and needed a way to listen to his work. He's put this cross devices now, and he simply takes screenshots and it makes its own audiobook. Snapverter from Text Help is a way you can take PDFs. It works within Google Drive. You take that PDF, drop it into their To Convert folder, and it, by magic, it automatically converts it to be accessible. If you need an offline version, the CPen is a scanner pen that actually is very effective. It can just scan across the text, and with either headphones or without, it will read the text right back, pretty efficiently used. There is a significant cost to it, but if you needed something offline, I do recommend it as a tool. Many people talked about different tools and devices. We mainly are an iPad school, and this is actually one of the reasons why. Because the iOS devices, iPads, iPhones, have built-in speech-to-text and text-to-speech tools. So I don't need to pay for anything else. It's already built in. Siri is that ability to take your speech to text, and under accessibility, they have the speak selection and speak screen. So anything on the screen can be read back to the student. So that is, if you're weighing the cost of a Chromebook versus an iPad, this was our choice because it seemed we didn't have to pay for another subscription tool. It was built right in. Do love the other tools, understand cost, but just knowing that if you're making that debate, that's why iPads can be a benefit. If you're working in a Chromebook or any other device that you can access the Chrome browser, Read and Write for Chrome is a wonderful tool. There is a subscription to it, although if you're an educator, it is free as long as you have an education email. And you can see the list of tools that's provided, but again, looking for reading supports, you can have the text to speech, but there's some highlighter tools built in, word prediction, dictionary, a whole lot built in. Wonderful tool from Text Help that can be used if someone is working in a Chromebook or a Chrome environment. Another wonderful tool, again, working in a browser, is Snap and Read. It's from Don Johnston. They have some other things built in as well, such as study tools for note-taking and organizing and outlining. So another robust tool, but if you're looking for accessibility, it also provides that. You would choose probably one or the other, Snap and Read versus Read and Write for Chrome, depending on your needs. And if you want to know more about that, definitely reach out to those companies. Microsoft, if you happen to be in the Microsoft 365 environment, or if not, and you want to dip your toes into it, there are some of the free tools like OneNote. They have this immersive reader and Microsoft Learning Tools that just keeps growing and growing and growing. It's really quite amazing. This is one of the current iterations of how their immersive reader, the left side will tell you all the things that it does, but again, read aloud, word line, highlighting. Someone mentioned a question about fonts and spacing and syllables. This is a tool that can do that. It really works across the board with a whole variety of tools. If you want to know more about Microsoft, I would leverage going to one of their stores or online for one of their training. I think they're moving more of their training online at this point in time, but they definitely do a lot of training related to this. So I'm going to dip a little bit toe into phonological awareness to put it in here, but again, you may want to go elsewhere to some other presentations. Again, that one I showed earlier about that. So phonological awareness, these are a variety of tools. They can be sound task specific. I'm going to speak more about sound literacy and Lexi in a second. The Meyerson OG deck is a great just set of cards. It's like flashcards, has great sound built in. If you are trained in the LIPS program, they also have a video of a mouth making the sound, so really great tool for that. It is an iOS tool. I'm going to toss up how you can do something like slides, and then some other tools that I will be more specific about as we get there. So this is sound literacy. It's unfortunately only an iOS app. So I'm sorry if you're not in the iOS environment, but this was created by a speech language pathologist. What I love about this is my first year of teaching, I was Wilson trained. And one of the things I loved about Wilson was those magnetic boards. However, of course, keeping track of all the tiles, maybe you needed more than one of a letter, got a little bit challenging. So I bought multiple kits, and then of course it was a disaster. So she created this wonderful tool that is exactly like that. These tiles moved it down into the bottom space and they replicate themselves. There is no sound attached to them. So this is not something you're going to hand to a student. It's meant to be a teaching tool that can be used. And you can see across the top, it really goes from the basics. And I will tell you really into that prefixes, suffixes, bases area. It's pretty advanced. What's also nice is if you're using this because it's on a teacher device, you can have more than one student within the app. So you don't need more than more subscriptions. As soon as you pay for it, you can have a number of students in here and just switch around if you're doing one-to-one or if you're using it as a class. If you're in a remote environment, such as we all were, our teachers had their iPad and they could mirror their iPad into their Zoom lesson and manipulate it through there to model what they wanted to be doing, because they were moving the tiles, not the students in this point in time. But if you were in a live lesson and felt comfortable, yes, the students could manipulate. There's also blank boxes, which I think, again, I go early on teaching when we use those color Unifix cubes to represent sounds. Those are built into this as well. If you wanted something with sound, again, iOS only, but this is very similar to that board, although there is sound attached to the letters. So great for students one-on-one practice. As they move the letter, it makes the sound. And as they put the word together, it reads the words. And the sounds are pretty pure, which is one of the things I like about this word wizard tool. If you're looking for something for reinforcement or something for families to have reinforcement, Lexia has been around for a very long time, and I've yet to find anything so far that I like any more than it. They are really robust in what they've done and kept up with. Their Lexia Core 5 is the elementary level. PowerUp is their middle school on up. It's really a wonderful, adaptive, prescriptive tool in nature. This teacher can go in and adjust it if they want specific skills worked on, or you could just have the program work along based on the student's performance, but it really follows that structured literacy kind of lesson. And they actually added grammar in recently as well. So kind of getting to that idea of a little bit phonological awareness decoding, this is where I'll address Classkick and slides. But if your Apple, could be Keynote, if your Microsoft, could be PowerPoint. And some people asked about interactive, that's where Nearpod and PeerDeck and Kahoot and quizzes will come in. So a couple of tools mashed here. So I love from my Orton-Gillingham fellow, she had started out when she came to us and we were small group instruction, she was one-to-one. She really wanted a way to differentiate easily for students in reading. So in our small group, she used this color coding. This could be on a Google Doc, it could be on a Google slide, whatever your tool may be. And by color coding, students knew whether it was handed to them on paper, shared to them on slides, projected on a board, projected in Zoom, they knew what color they were to focus on. And trust me, that's the only color they would want to focus on because they don't want to read more than they had to. It also determined, okay, you don't get the, hey, they read my words, because they knew what color they were to read. It was also beneficial because you could differentiate as need be. Maybe you needed stronger vocabulary for the student in blue and simpler, more common words for the student in yellow. And it's not obvious to the students, but easily done in these tables, and you can copy and replicate them over and over again. So that was one quick way to differentiate and present words to students. Again, you could use this remotely. We used it in the classroom, pretty easy way to do that. But I wanted to build in a little bit more to it. So I could take this Google slide, upload it into a tool called Nearpod. Nearpod has a free level and they have various paid levels. So the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 is my words, my sentences, my phrases for students. They could move around within there and I would have them read out loud. In Nearpod as well, down the bottom right of my teacher device, where you see that little 1 in the green, tells me how many students are active in the lesson. So I know who's there, their name, and it goes red if somebody goes out. this was very, very beneficial in remote learning, because if my student was off somewhere, I could see it, I could go in and see who it was and just give a quick verbal cue, hey, you need to be back in the tool. So really great to see. But within Nearpod as well, not only could I get this reading, this does not record it, this would be done in a live lesson. I could add on some interactive tools and questions. Keep clicking my own links. So that after the reading is done orally, this is questions the students would be able to answer. And again, these are built right within the tool. They have drawing, they have these multiple choice questions. They actually now have a fun game-based quiz that can be done. Very similar, I think, Kahoot and quizzes. So I didn't need more than one tool to say, okay, here we're going to do the reading. Okay, let's go out to this other tool to get some assessment further along. It was all built into this one particular tool. Very similar, if you some of the things that it can do is PeerDeck. PeerDeck only works with Google Slides. It is a Google extension, Google add-on. My Orton-Gillingham fellow loves it. She's been using it avidly for her presentation, for what she could get from the students remotely and in the classroom. So they function, they both have little bits that are a little different. They both have great YouTube channels to learn more about them. Again, don't forget game-based. I love Kahoot, probably the more familiar of the two, but I'm a bigger fan of quizzes. Quizzes has the ability for students to be able to listen to the question and the responses. So it can be read aloud. They can turn that on in their side of settings, which it used to be only on the teacher side, which is great. It's also nice because it puts the work, the question and the responses on the student's device, no matter if it's live or if it's asynchronous, such as a homework. So they're not doing any far point looking and trying to read and remember. It's always on their device, and again, can be read aloud. And I love that you can go into quizzes and borrow other people's and mash yours with theirs. A really great environment to work in, and it's free. So again, you can see that they can turn on this read aloud. I will tell you, these memes are also what make it. It's really a lot of fun. Many people asked about fluency. So I'm going to talk through a couple of these tools. I know you keep seeing this Classkick. I've kind of made it its own section coming up to answer one big question that many of you asked me. So with fluency, one thing that you can do is leverage Fluency Tutor from Text Help. I know it's been free for a time period as we've gone through this. It's a really formalized way. It must work in Chrome, so you have to be in that Chrome environment. But it's a really great way. They've developed this program for monitoring and things like that. However, there is a cost to it. So another thought is to say, okay, what about a tool like here in the Apple suite of tools? They can record audio. So I could put a passage, they could record their audio, them reading it, and get it right back to me. But I'm going to tell you about Classkick. Many of you asked, what's my go-to tool? Now, and maybe before, this would be it. This is a very robust tool that's very basic in nature, but you can build a lot off of it. It is free for up to 20 lessons, and then there's a subscription. This is one I highly encourage you get your schools into. So here is again that same drill I mentioned back in Nearpod and in Google Slides. However, here it is made in Classkick. Actually, I think I made the boxes out in a Google Doc and copied and pasted, took a picture and brought it in. There is many benefits to this. So first of all, I can audio record my directions. The toolbar across the top is accessible on the teacher end and on the student end. So you have drawing, you have highlighting, you have text boxes, you have audio recording, snapshots they can bring in. So here I could have many students in, again, small group environment, be recording themselves reading their words. Again, they could read their list. Here they could read others if they really wanted to. And if you have headphones, it could be done in a small group environment very easily. And many of you asked about data. So here's a great way for data, because you have them reading and it saves the recording. So you can access it at any point later. I will show you a brief look at the teacher's end. So again, multiple students at once, can be done remotely very easily, can be done synchronously or asynchronously. So homework, or if they're not allowed to be on a live lesson, you can still share this to them. It's shared with just a code. There is no sign up that the students need to do. There is a level that can go on up and sign in with Google if you're at their paid level, but not necessary. Additionally, this is one of our lower school teachers created this. She had created a whole lesson. Each is a slide. And so she had the students again do the recording of what was the work, and then she added in some other lessons. Somebody asked about trace, copy, cover. Here's kind of a version of trace, copy, cover. She recorded herself doing the directions. Those are the recordings that are there. So she could give the oral directions so the students could listen on their own to what was being said. And again, complete the activity, whether it be synchronously or asynchronously. This was a great example I pulled off of Classkick's site. So again, reading passage that you want them to complete some activities. Again, great for remote learning. You know, this is something we might have just done on paper in a classroom and we couldn't at this point in time. And now I may never do again, who knows? But that you could have a passage, you could have a picture of a passage or type it in yourself. And then you could have them complete higher level activities if I'm thinking about middle school on up. This went further down that they had to put in responses, again, can be handwritten, can be dictated, or, you know, if they were using speech to text, could audio record, or they could type. So it also is kind of a UDL of how response on how they could provide their response to you. So this kind of gives a look at what happens on the teacher side. So on the right would be what I would see on a student's. You can go on to a student slide and provide feedback, stickers, check marks, typing. You can't adjust or do anything with what is they have put on. They can't do anything with what you have put on the slide. And on the left, it was what I would see on my end. And I can go actively to each student's slides. I see their work. I retain their work forever. So until I clear the roster of kids. So again, for that data purpose, you can go back and listen or look at a later time, and also actively go onto a student's slide while they're working on it. So if you're remote and someone says, I need help, there's a little hand they can raise. You can see on the student slide that they can raise their hand. I need help on this slide. You can go on and actively provide feedback while the student is also on that same slide. Great in the classroom, great remotely. Again, this is my go-to tool. This was probably the tool that my staff, when we went remotely, we were already using it somewhat, is actually the survey I just put out to them. This was their top tool because there's so much that could be done with it. As the examples I saw our teachers make was just remarkable. And somebody asked about manipulatives and moving things. Classkick, you can add in manipulatives. You can have tiles so they can be dragging letters, they can be dragging words, you can make a word sort. There's a great example on their YouTube channel as well of how to do that. So this is also a great tool where you can have those manipulatives. So differentiated contextual reading, that's always a big thing. Big one, Newsela, Newsela, depending on which camp you're in. Freckle has a very similar format to that. We use it because of their math side, so it wasn't an added in that we have access to it, but same thing. Nonfiction articles that can be adjusted, and a new one to me is Tween Tribune from Smithsonian. Also a great bank, very similar to the other two, about how you can take the same article and you can adjust the lexile level so that the understanding of information will be the same, but the sentence structure and vocabulary will be adjusted for the student if they are reading this. Rewordify is a site that is all on its own. It's completely free. The others have a free and paid levels depending on the tools, although I know most of them we use for free, but that you can put in text from anywhere and it will simplify the language. It's just not lexile level specific. So if you're not familiar with any of the first three, this is kind of what it looks like. This is an example from Newsela that you can take a grade level 6 article and you can take the word count down, the level down, but have the students read it and be able to have a class discussion because they're going to have a same understanding of what the essence of the article was about, just in a simpler form of language that makes them feel successful in their reading of it. Rewordify, I'm not going to play the video, but I put it here as a marker. Again, it's also on YouTube, but to give you a clue that this is more how it adjusts it. So you can take a very complex sentence and you can have it completely reword it. You can have the words next to each other. There's some specific settings in there about it. It is free. They also have a whole load of literature already put in here, particularly I think of for high school on up, that is already in there and accessible for free. It's quite the bank of things. You get a better understanding of it if you watch their video, but I'm always amazed when I come back to this because it's been around for a while and it's always remained completely free. Many asked about comprehension. Such a challenge. There's a variety of different tools that I'm going to mention. ReadWorks is another great bank of readings. They have fiction and nonfiction that can really cross the board access, remote, not remote. Love their bank of materials that can be found in ReadWorks for any interest level. Lit charts, just briefly, if I recall 8th grade, it was the book All Quiet on the Western Front. Didn't love it, still don't love it. It's stuck in my mind all this way, and I got through it with those little black and yellow Cliff Notes books. Lit charts is the modern version of this. It is digital, so easy to access from anywhere, but provides those same supports that those Cliff Notes, which became Spark Notes, now in the digital format. Insert Learning and Actively Learn and Common Lit have something very similar in common. This is where questions are embedded into text. So if you have students who struggle, particularly working memory or processing, and they can't retain a lot of information as they read longer passages, these are great tools. Common Lit is free. The questions are already made and you can't do anything with them. So that would be the one caveat. However, if you find things there that work, wonderful. Actively Learn and Insert Learning are very similar, although Insert Learning has an added benefit of you can do this in any web page as well, but it has to work in the Chrome environment only. Does not work in an iOS environment at all. Actively Learn is really, stays within the site. It's about books and articles, and I'm going to be more specific about that. So in essence, what both the tools do, this being specifically Actively Learn, this is one our school does use, but Insert Learning is quite robust and amazing as well, particularly for its ability to do this in a web page. So here I have what my literature class was reading, but again, as opposed to saying, go read this entire chapter or read pages 4 through 6 and answer these questions, where one, they may not be able to retain the information and it's hard to look back for what they might need to refer to. I can embed questions directly throughout the text where I feel it's important or necessary. So I might only go about 3 paragraphs depending on the students, and then I can embed a question. It can be multiple choice or short answer. Students can dictate if they choose, and I can go on and grade all my students at once. So I can see all their responses, or I could sort by student in particular if I needed to. They have a rubric system. I provide my students with the expectations to get each one of these responses. They can go back and edit their responses to get a better score if you want them to. I love this tool. This has been one, again, we've paid for just because of the ability to do this. And this was so beneficial in remote learning. I would think grade 4 on up is probably the best access to this. Might be a little challenging for younger students, and I'm not sure the content is fully there for them. They also have nonfiction articles. You can import PDFs. If you have the free version, you can import 3 a month for free, and they stay there, so you can do 3 every month. If you have the free version and you're accessing the books, they need to be rented for a particular cost. It's like $5 per copy. If you go for their paid version, you have access to all the materials for free. But this has been really helpful for us to be able to do literature teaching outside in this remote environment, because we had complete access to all the texts that were built in. It is accessible. Students can listen to them within this tool. They have that listening feature built in. I also like it because I can also, as the teacher, put in notes. So, hey, here's something to think about for tomorrow's class when you read this, or here's an example of a literary element that I want you to pay attention to. Really neat tool. And again, I love the feedback feature back and forth with the students. ReadWorks in particular also has this wonderful article a day. So that is at a quick snippet if you need that last minute thing to do at the end of a period, or you want to get something warmed up to get started. One of my teachers who's not really a tech person really relies on this. She loves being able to do this. Can be online, can be in paper format. Maybe you take them and put them in some other tool, but it's nice because it's a quick article. It's meant to be about 10 minutes, as they say, and can really cover a lot of different topics and a lot of different skills at once. If you're working with younger students, you want to make friends with Epic. Our lower school teachers love this. It is completely free for educators. It is only accessible though with the educator account. So the teacher makes an account, brings in students, but the students can only access the books. I think it's between 8 and 4. It's meant to be free for the school day. Parents can pay for it themselves to access it after hours. I don't know how they've managed this, but it's pretty remarkable. But if you're working with younger students, particularly literature or really any topic, and you want to get kids reading, this is a wonderful free resource. Again, can be used on any device. I love it because of the picture books, which is something you don't necessarily get in Learning Ally or Bookshare. Wonderful resource. And some of them have the auditory along with it. Another tool that came across over this last year is Rivet. Also has, they have YouTube books, a whole variety of different books and things to cover different topics that can be found. Again, it's an iOS app, but if you're in that environment, it might be something to check out. Now, ways to demonstrate knowledge. This is kind of when we're doing reading, how, I can have them do an actively learn and answer traditional questions, and I can have them do a whole variety of other things, but I want to get a little creative with them. One of my favorite iOS tools was Reading Comprehension Booster, but 1, it's only iOS, and 2, it's really designed for elementary school students. And I work with middle school students. So I figured out a way to make my own companion guides. So this is what Reading Comprehension Booster looks like. It's a really neat tool. It could be just on the teacher's device and projected, so you could collaborate as a class, or on student's device. There is a slight cost to the app, so our teachers just use it on theirs and project it or share it through Zoom. So you can really have that conversation about different parts of stories. The text connections, the setting, the different parts. There's a plot analysis. So I loved it, but not with older students. So I got creative one year. This is in Keynote, but again, could be done in slides, could be done in PowerPoint. I found this great plot chart on Teachers Pay Teachers that I brought in. I added in different literary elements where then my students were required to go find an image that matched it. We had our whole note-taking throughout the book designed into this one slide presentation so that they could constantly be adding on to it depending on what we were doing in class that day. So this could, again, be shared virtually. You could be modeling it on yours while they're doing it on theirs. You could do it as a group, particularly if you're in Google Slides. You could share one where the teacher's just the one working on it and students are verbally giving information, or have their own, or you could have them connect and collaborate. But I love the idea of building those activities that I might have done on paper or just written on a board into a tool that they could refer back to later. And again, I preloaded some of the information, and then there were things they were required to add on. And back to my favorite tool, Classkick. I got creative as I was building a lesson for Hatchet, and I said, wow, in this remote environment, I don't want to do Keynote, not as easy to do. Slides, I now know, but wasn't sure how I could add on afterwards. That is also one advantage of Classkick. As you've built a lesson, if you go later and add on to it, then it will add on for the students with the code. You do need to make sure students, if you're using the free one, always use the same name to log in. Otherwise, it will create a different lesson for them. So usually I tell students to just do their first name, last initial, so they get in the habit so that there is no confusion that they have multiple ones and then don't see the work they have done. But I love this again because in the Classkick, they could dictate, they could audio record, they could type, they could handwrite. And I could build in that whole interactive activity right within the tool. To get a little creative, again, one of my amazing lower school teachers, she wanted to make something interactive and accessible. She took the book Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs. She recorded herself reading the pages and then put in these questions, recorded herself reading the question, and then the students again had that choice because within Keynote, although the web-based version of Google Slides can also record audio so that the students could type or they could record themselves giving the responses. Because this was in-house, it wasn't a copyright issue to do. It'd be like copying a page that you might project, clearly not publishing it anywhere, but it was really, she loved how this could engage the students at their own pacing. They could move at their own pacing. It was a lot of work up front, she admitted. She built in some vocabulary activities as well, but she said once she had created it and watched the students work on it daily and at their own pacing, be able to re-listen as they chose, to be recording themselves, giving that responses and re-recording as need be, was really engaging for her to continue this kind of activity. Flipgrid. Flipgrid is an amazing tool. I was mentioned it briefly back in Fluency. If Fluency, this may be your tool. This is a free tool. It was bought by Microsoft, which is now what makes it free. So it follows the education guidelines. There's so much you can do in Flipgrid. I have used it wonderfully for students with fluency drills. What was great, somebody specifically asked about recording and re-recording. When we did this with some students, we would go through a passage, do all the work, and then the students record themselves 3 Fridays in a row. And then they had to review their previous recordings each week and provide a rating system. What I loved about this also was that our lower school teachers started to use it. And what we don't think about with fluency, so often we sit and we give students feedback about what they need to improve. Once the students started really listening to themselves, whether it be our middle schoolers on down to our second graders, the students made marked difference because they were hearing themselves and were forced to go back and re-listen to themselves. They could hear automatically what was going wrong. Again, we had a second grade class that the teacher said she had never seen such change. And she said the students really could say, I'm reading too fast, I'm reading too slow, I need to make this change and that change. And so it was a really great tool to engage for that. Some of the students don't like themselves on video. I had a young man who did not. So he would just hold a paper up in front of himself, which was fine. I just needed the recording. And I remember I had the same young man 3 years in a row. And at the end of his last year, when I showed this to his mother and played some of his readings over the time period, it was the first time she had heard her son read since 3rd grade. So that was also really marked for me, that I could play this back for a parent and have them hear the difference for a young man who wouldn't read to his mother. Not surprising from a middle school boy, but also goes back to those who ask about data. Here you can go back as the teacher and listen at any time and make those moments. If you're doing running records, this is also great because you can record, replay as much as you want. Flipgrid also can be used for so many other things. The examples here, they have a great resource site on their page where you can access multiple ideas and examples of lessons. This is really a tool that you can also do so much with. Might be my second favorite over Classkick. Many people, particularly in lower school, I find are using Seesaw for that similar idea of being able to have students record themselves and explain their understanding through video. It's a really great, robust tool that I think is really wonderful for lower school students to be able to, in a more safe, closed environment, being able to share their information, share their knowledge, and engage with the teacher, whether it be in the classroom or in remote learning. One great thing I love about Seesaw, and you could do in other ways, is that some students in our remote learning were doing things still on paper. And we did it with Google Classroom, but I know Seesaw can do this, where students would work on paper, they would take a picture, and then they could upload it into Seesaw. Again, we did Google Classroom, same idea. So if you have students still doing some paper things, if you're in remote learning, taking a video or taking a screenshot is a great way and getting some sort of format where they can upload it in there and still demonstrate their knowledge. Quick plug for EdPuzzle. It is not print, it is video. I love using video for my students, particularly could take away some of those print things. EdPuzzle is a free tool. They do have a paid level, but you probably are not going to need it. EdPuzzle is where you can take videos, and like I talked about with Insert Learning and Actively Learn, you can embed questions. So science and social studies, this is remarkable, although they have some great literary elements ones with the like Pixar films where there's no words, and they're just to visually look at, but you can embed multiple choice or short answer questions throughout a video. It is wonderful. Again, highly recommended for science and social studies because there's such a robust bank of that, but you can find so many other things. I've even found now in remote learning, there are some people who recorded books so that I could leverage that when I was not having a book that was in Actively Learn. So I think there's going to be so much more people use with this. I can't recommend this tool enough. Again, video. So we're working on, visual and auditory comprehension, not print. But sometimes I think we need to change it up and move away from print for these kind of learners. For just creative engagement, why not have students make their own podcast? I think that's a great way. I had a lower school teacher who did this not in Anchor. She actually did it in Keynote. Again, slides. You could do it with the record audio feature. She had students on two students on a slide have a conversation about a particular book. One was about characters, one was about setting. But I love that idea that putting students into the idea of podcasting. Again, if you really want to go public, Anchor is free. Maybe you want to make one of your own. But thinking about having students use a podcast format to explain their understanding of something they read. If you really are thinking about, I need some new active ideas, this is a couple examples. I love this book and this person ditched that textbook. He's got a couple other books out there too. These are links to different activities. The links are right within here to have students create something in Google Slides. And it's going to look like Instagram or it's going to look like TikTok, their favorite right now. And I also put a link that he has other 30 interactives that for those who don't want to get outside into too many tools, I love what you can do with Google Slides. There's so much you can do. And this is some great examples of some engagement where you could have students demonstrate their knowledge from what they are reading, whether it be in literature or science or social studies, and in a creative, active way that's not just answering questions. If you're on Twitter, I recommend following him. But if not, there are some great resources. I do have a link to his website right on the book. But ditch that textbook. Wonderful resource for creative ideas. Just briefly, some people asked about how to get students excited in reading. I can't plug enough for graphic novels. Great article here from Kyle Redford, whose husband was the one who created The Big Picture. They have a son with dyslexia. There's a link here to a discussion about graphic novels and why they can be beneficial for those people who are naysayers. And just to build on that, if we're thinking about graphic novels as a way to engage students in reading, they're so much fun. There are some great comic-based websites that, again, these are all different websites that students can make their own comics. So you can build onto that, make it incorporate a writing lesson, or maybe it's they're demonstrating some part of the story themselves. Some of these are free, some have a paid subscription. Book Creator, I love for that if you're in an iOS, but they also work in the Chrome environment. So if we're thinking about engaging them in comics or creation, why not have them also demonstrate their knowledge in some other creative way for their understanding of what they have read? Again, you'll have access to these if you access the slides, but I just wanted to put them in there because many of the questions were about how to get students engaged. And graphic novels reading wise, I think is wonderful. And then having them maybe create their own is another great way to keep students engaged and demonstrate their understanding. A couple of things to learn more. A lot of these tools, I have curated a YouTube channel that link will go to. It's a YouTube channel that I just put videos that are already out there by various resources that are quick how-tos. Many of you asked about writing. I wasn't going to get into writing today, but the Southport Collab, we have a YouTube channel. Back in January, I did a short 20-minute tool webinar about writing, also about note-taking and quickly on reading. You can access them there. I also did about last week, did a whole hour-long about writing in Southport Collab, and that is available on our Collab website. If you go under courses, that you can register. It was a $25 fee, but then you would have access to that hour-long video on writing supports. I also did someone similar to this and another one about structured literacy on my own, just about the technology for Pennsylvania Department of Ed back at the end of June. It's going to be on their YouTube channel soon. I'm not sure exactly when, but I know it's coming soon, but you can keep an eye on their YouTube channel. Also on the Southport Collab YouTube channel, if you're a preschool teacher, we had some great people work with us over this time period of being remote and shared plenty of free resources for working with preschoolers. So I encourage you to go there. All of it's free. Anything you want to know, again, about more of these tools, I've thrown a lot at you. I want to get as much information, but always contact the companies for online demonstrations, again, or go to YouTube. Many of them have put them there, from short introductions to longer how-tos, and always connect with others I find on Facebook or Twitter to learn more. I learned from connecting and collaborating with fellow colleagues. So again, briefly, there's the link to this presentation. I'm going to go through some of your questions in these last 10 minutes that really stood out to me, and hopefully can get some of them answered. I also encourage you to check out my blog, and I'll put links to the podcast when I get back up and running, because many of them I'm going to tackle and answer there. So a couple of questions that stood out to me. I know many parents are struggling with enough screen time right now, and that's been really challenging. We had the same pushback. And it's really a delicate balance. There is nothing wrong if you're doing remote learning to have students do things on paper and pencil and drawing. And then either they could hold it up to a screen, take a screenshot and share it to you. We actually sent home to all of our students a whiteboard and marker so that they could do that and share it that way through the class. So nothing wrong with that. And exchanging that imagery through photo or video can be great to do. So there was a deluge, and I'm sorry, because there was a question. I'm sorry, I'm drowning in deluge, and I may have deluged you more. Anytime you're thinking about working with technology and you're overwhelmed, I always say pick one tool, and pick the tool that's your biggest bang for your buck. I will tell you, for our teachers, my teachers who were not using technology a lot before we went remote, because that was just the way they taught, their biggest bang for their buck was Classkick. That was the feedback I got from my not tech savvy teachers. They felt they could get on there. We had some definitely demonstration lessons, and they felt that was enough for them to get going. And it's the one tool they're going to continue using. Flipgrid might be another one, but not as probably far usage. But find one tool and stick with it. Maybe it's PeerDeck. PeerDeck is a really great tool. If you're really working within Google Slides, definitely leverage that. If you want a little bit more, maybe explore Nearpod. But don't try too many things at once. Particularly, we found in remote learning, we couldn't have too many different tools for the students because that got overwhelming. It also allowed those students who are distractible to get further off task because they got lost. It didn't do this, it's glitching, I don't know, the cat went across the room, and that's forget it, because they were trying to switch within tools. So definitely keep it simple to the tools you're using remotely, I think really in any classroom, because there's more opportunity for distraction. So again, think about, are you living in that slides environment? Are you living in the Microsoft environment? Is the Classkick going to be your answer? Or is it just one or two tools that you feel comfortable with that can go further? And then maybe you explore as other examples or issues arise. Regarding the recording app, somebody asked to encourage students repeated readings. That's where I would go with Flipgrid. Or maybe you want to do it in Classkick, but Flipgrid really great. A couple of people asked about assistive technology too early. I don't think it's ever too early. I find that if I can give students supports while they're still learning, one, they find success. They're able to find success often for the first time. And I think about this with a couple of our younger students who really came in school broken. And by giving them text-to-speech and speech-to-text tools just off the bat, they were finding they could find some independence and be able to demonstrate their knowledge and access knowledge in a way that was beneficial for them. That doesn't stop the instruction. We still provide instruction, and I have never found a student who increased their skill development and stuck to the technology when they didn't need to. So I think it's wonderful to engage students with technology at young ages to make them feel comfortable, to find that path out, to find school to be a success, and then keep the instruction going. And when they really need it, they're going to have something there that can help them. It also can take a burden off an educator and a parent. I mean, how wonderful to have a student be able to go listen to their own book or dictate their own writing and feel that independence and success. And it will often open up their eyes to say, hey, learning can be fun and I can do it. So never too early. So hopefully I answered many of these questions. Oh, this was a big one that stuck out to me. So somebody asked about if you're the special ed teacher and you're trying to encourage other educators, or regular educators who I hope are on here, to use these, and they're a little hesitant. That can be difficult. I will tell you, even in my school, when I started pushing this a little bit more, I definitely had teachers who were, I'm not going to use any of this. Sometimes there's a couple of different approaches. One, find that one teacher who's open to it. Find that one teacher who's open to it and with that one tool, and help them engage with that class. If you find that one teacher and they find success, they're going to tell others. And then somebody else is going to want to know, and somebody else is going to want to know. I've seen it happen. You cannot win over everybody, and you probably never will. I had teachers that refused to use technology, which was perfectly fine to me, although now they're relying on it immensely. But find that one teacher or two teachers and work with them and cultivate them. Also, you can start with a student. I have students who I work with directly with assistive technology. I teach them. The teacher is okay with them using it. They just want nothing to do with it. They're, I say, okay, the student's going to manage it. You don't have to do anything. Are they allowed to do it? Yes, great. As soon as that student shows that independence and their ability to complete tasks with the technology, it wins over many educators to say, hey, I want to know more. Sometimes that puts the student in the driver's seat because the teacher will go to them and say, hey, show me what you're doing. And then they're amazed, and then they want to know more. And again, then you've won over another teacher who's going to tell other teachers. So it's very start small with those successes, a student, a teacher, and it will spread. It may take time. It has definitely taken time for me to be able to win people over. My headmaster always keeps reminding me of that, but it's got to come at a time. Unfortunately, I think many of us got thrown into technology with remote learning, and we may now either be balking and backing off and overloaded, but hopefully we can even it out and know that some of this technology is so beneficial for students and can help us. Again, we know many of us are going to continue remote learning, and that we may end up back in remote learning. And I will tell you, all the tools I talked about today, I have talked about before COVID, and I will tell you, will still work in remote learning. So that's what I love about them. They're not about remote learning, but they all can be used in remote learning because they can be accessible on a student's device. There's an interactive nature, hopefully a little bit, that you can find that when you're building a lesson for students that they can engage. One quick thing too is many of you asked about assessment and distance learning. I'm not going to specifically address that. However, I have my director of education and my director of our language department, our Orton-Gillingham fellow, who are running a webinar for the Southport Collab this coming Monday, July 20th. Make sure that date was right. It is $25. If you go to the Southport Collab website and go under courses, you can see the ability to register for that. I know they're going to talk about some informal assessments that aren't distance learning, but I know they are specifically putting together with recommendations for distance learning. So hope that will help some of you who are asking about assessments. There was a lot here today, fast and furious, but I hope to get the basics of information out to you. You can always reach out to me if you want to know more. I love to connect with people and help you get yourself up to speed, and our students and our families feeling more comfortable with any learning technology, and your educators as well. So please reach out. Again, I hope to blog and podcast about all of your questions, and appreciate all of your time that you took today to join in.
Sharon, thank you so much for this great presentation. It's always a pleasure to hear the great ideas that you're sharing with all of us. Thank you everyone who is listening for joining us today. We hope that this was informative. It will be available in recording as well, so please feel free to check it out again or share it with colleagues who missed it today. As we're closing up, I just want to make a quick reminder to consider making a donation to IDA's COVID-19 Relief Fund. Please subscribe to our and like us on social media, and come back for some of our upcoming webinars. And for those of you who are in an area that do have an IDA branch, please consider also reaching out to your local branch for events that are near to you that are offered via the branch. So enjoy your afternoons, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you again in a couple of weeks for our next webinar. Thanks again, Sharon. We appreciate it. Take care.